Hello and welcome to this next session. If this is your first talk with us today, then welcome to the Sales Enablement Festival. And for those of you who've already been tuning in to our selection of talks, welcome back. It's a packed day ahead, so if you can't catch it all, you can watch every session on demand with an Access All Areas pass or an SEC membership. And if you're enjoying the content, you should know that the Sales Enablement Summit is back on its in-person world tour. Before the end of the year, we'll be in Sydney, Chicago, London, and Toronto with hundreds of enablement practitioners, a great chance to find the knowledge, solutions, and people you need to excel. But right now, ready to go live. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the next session. Hello everyone. Yes, welcome back to this next session. This session is hosted by Nicholas Day, who is the VP of Global Go-to-Market Strategy and Enablement over at Elastic. And he's going to be talking to you all about accelerating time to impact, productivity, and ramp. So Nicholas, over to you.
Hey everybody, Jack, thanks for the opportunity to speak here. I've had a chance to play in this space for some time. I've had a multitude of a number of different sales roles through my career. And in my last few companies, what I found really had a lot of impact was, as a strategist, somebody who tries to put together the strategy on how do you accelerate a business. You could put together a strategy, but if you don't pair it with the enablement team and have those two functions together, it's hard to execute. So I've been fortunate to work for our chief sales officer in the past few companies where we align with their objectives, build the strategies, and leverage the enablement team to roll these out. Now, it's great to roll them out, but I'm sure many of you get asked the question, what's our ramp time? How are we accelerating productivity, especially in today's day and age when you're looking at the macroeconomic situation going on in the world? It's all about measuring impact. And what I wanted to do is walk you through some of the things that I've experienced over a number of different companies that drive impact, and maybe give you a few things to think of. So when we talk about the importance of ramp and productivity, you know, in some companies that are hiring very quickly, time to impact is critical. If you're going to hire 1,000 people in a year, 10 people in a year, this is an investment your sales organization is making. And like any investment, you want to get to a quick return on investment. How quickly are you capitalizing on that investment? These are the kind of things that your board, your investors, your executives, and your boss are probably asking about. So how do you measure that time to impact? For every day that you can shorten that time to impact, you can have a bigger impact on your fiscal year. You know, if you're looking at a ramp time that is 6 months, that means that anybody that you hire today, if you've got a calendar fiscal year, there's not going to be any impact in this calendar year. But if you can accelerate their time to impact, then suddenly you're impacting what they can do within your fiscal period. So it helps you drive more. The second is it drives CRO strategy decisions. If you're looking at how quickly people are ramping and the type of productivity that people are achieving, it helps you guide your hiring decisions. For example, if you are speaking to a sales leader in one part of the world, let's say somewhere in Europe, and that leader is showing that as they hire reps, those reps are able to hit ramp and are able to contribute profitability to the company within 90 days. But then you speak to another leader in another part of the world who has reps that are taking 12 months to ramp up for the same type of business. If you can hire one person or 10 people, where are you going to put that investment? You obviously want to invest where you can have the biggest impact from a productivity perspective as quickly as possible. So this helps shape those strategy decisions. The final one, if you're kind of bringing it more to an internally looking metric, is how do you quantify enablement? Enablement is important. You're teaching reps how to sell. You're teaching them your talk track, how to sell to customers, the entire sales motion, how to scale your business. But it's hard to quantify because there's multiple factors in there. So being able to measure these two key metrics, I believe, are truly critical. When I speak to anybody within my company or in previous companies, they say, well, what do you measure your impact on? I really talk about two things, ramp and productivity. Those are the two metrics that matter most. Productivity ultimately will get impacted by decreasing your ramp time. So being maniacally focused on those two, being able to have a common definition that you all agree to, and then being able to impact that and measure success or measure improvements, I think is pretty critical. So if we jump into ramp, I mean, this is the biggest black box. No matter who you speak to, you will get a different definition of ramp. Is it somebody that's been with the company for 6 months? Is it the time to creating their first quote? Is it the time to creating their first deal or closing their first deal? Is it how long it takes them to get to a point where they're covering their costs? You know, if you're spending $200,000 a year on a rep, fully burdened, is it the time that it takes to get to the point where they're covering their costs? Is it the point where they get to free cash flow break even, where the rep is not only covering their costs, but the entire cost of the organization, including development, engineering costs, marketing costs, and other costs? Is it the point where they start achieving their quota, which could be below free cash flow break even, or it could be above, but it's the quota that's set that ideally is driving the company into profitability and towards their financial goals? Or is it the point at which they achieve median attainment of a tenured rep? So looking at a rep that has been here for a few years and that has had a lot of success, what's the average attainment of those reps? And how long does it take for a new hire to get to that point? As you can see, there's many different ways of looking at ramp, and the reality is none of them is incorrect. It's all about aligning with your leadership team to understand what are the metrics that matter most to your organization and having one common definition. Once you have that, then you can go back and you can start looking at the data behind it and looking at, are you improving? Are you having an impact there? And is that impact around the world? Is it localized? What's working? What's not? And let me dig into that a little bit more. So when you think about accelerating time to impact, we talk about decreasing ramp. Is it just enablement? You know, a lot of people will turn and say, hey, your enablement program, you guys aren't onboarding reps well. They're just not ramping fast enough. And you know what? I disagree, because there are 4 critical factors that impact the ramp of a new rep. And I want to walk you through them. The first one, which sounds obvious, is hiring right. And it could be looking at the right profile of a rep, but I'd argue that it is hiring the right rep at the right time for the right set of accounts with the right contacts. You know, if you were to take a rep that has sold hardware, let's call it PCs and laptops, into Citigroup for the last 20 years and has been rep of the year after year, that rep would be considered very knowledgeable about Citigroup. But if you bring them in to sell an ERP cloud software application, that rep may not have the right contacts. So they may have had a lot of success with that account, but do they have the right contacts? And are they the right rep at that point in time? Likewise, are you hiring somebody when you're in a growth phase, you know, from a startup perspective or a company that's emerging? You need somebody that's got maybe a bit more grit, a bit more entrepreneurial edge. So are you hiring the right profile in terms of a hunter versus a farmer? Very different profiles for different stages of your company. There's a great book by Jeff Smart called Who. I'd encourage you to take a look at that. Probably one of the most impactful books I've read, but it's all about hiring the right person. And if you hire right, then the next step is bring them into a warm territory. You can hire the best rep, right contacts, right everything. But if you drop them into a territory that has zero business, zero active accounts, zero pipeline, well, that rep will be successful eventually, but it might take them a year or 2 to get to a point where they're driving as much impact. Versus think of a rep that you've hired that you've dropped into a territory that already has active customers, active business pipeline. That rep can lean right in, get right into deals, and start producing right away, and they will ramp faster. So your territory design, your territory carving plays a very important role. The third one, obviously, onboarding and enablement. Are you just giving them a link to one online e-learning course and expect them to succeed? Or do you have a proper onboarding program? You know, some of the best programs I've seen, people reach out to the new hire right off the start. They involve them in cohorts. They make them feel part of a team. They give them some enablement over the talk track, the why, the selling message, the sales pitch, the company, and then they give them ongoing coaching and enablement over many months. Some of the best companies I've worked for give up to 9 months of ongoing mentorship to help that rep really scale. So how do you onboard and enable that new hire? Now, all this is great, and you will have an impact on ramp if you're doing these things correctly. But the last one that is most critical is management and coaching. Because if you hire the right rep, you put them in the right territory and you give them a lot of great enablement, and then the rep goes and the manager doesn't follow up or push them on articulating their sales pitch or ask them for their plan, their account plan, their territory plan, it all falls apart. So you need to make sure that you align these 4 components. The hiring, that's partnership with your talent team, with your HR team. It's your territory, that's with your sales ops team, that's making sure you're carving the right territories and that they're warm and equally distributed, or that you're setting different RAM targets based on white space versus green space accounts, that you've got your right onboarding and enablement program. And then finally, from a management and coaching perspective, that you've set some criteria. What are the expectations for your leaders? What do you expect them to do? And that you're enabling your leaders. You know, we all hire amazing leaders that come on board to a company that know how to lead a sales team, but it's making sure to indoctrinate them in how to lead a sales team within your organization. And that's critical. So how do you measure ramp? You know, this is just a very rudimentary sketch using the state-of-the-art sales analytics tool you may have heard called Excel. I know many of us use that. But it's looking at how do you track progression? So in this very simple example, on top, you're looking at the average attainment per cohort. So if you're to look at the Q4 of fiscal year 21 cohort, let's say there were 23 reps. This is all fictional data, by the way, but just to illustrate a point. So we hired 23 people that quarter within their first full quarter, because you can't really measure in terms of days or months unless you have the right tools to do so. But most companies will look at attainment over the course of a quarter. So if these people were hired in Q4, I like to count the first full quarter that they're in territory as their first quarter. So in Q1, their first quarter with the company, that group of 28 had an average attainment of 58%. In the second quarter, 72%, then 81%, then 85%. And by their 5th full quarter with the company, the average attainment of that cohort was 110%. Hey, looking at that data, I'd assume, all right, it takes my team 5 quarters to get to fully ramped. Well, you can't just look at the average attainment. You also have to dig into those metrics a little bit and then look at the bottom graph, which is the bottom table, which is the percentage of reps that are achieving quota. So in that first quarter, even though the average attainment was 58%, only 5% of reps hit quota. So that means you did have some reps that maybe got into some warm territories and hit their number. But now if we fast forward all the way through to Q1 FY23, where I was claiming success saying, hey, 110% was the average attainment, people have ramped. Well, that would assume that everybody got over 100%. But looking at that data at the bottom, only 35% of reps actually did hit their quota. So that means that 65% missed it. That's where you want to look at median attainment. And you want to be able to look at data from different angles, because one slice of the data doesn't tell the full story. When you start to piece this together and you start to look at it not only holistically from a company perspective, but by geo, by segment, depending on how you slice your data, you can start to see where there's certain reps that are ramping faster than others. Is there a trend? Is it that certain reps that are working for certain leaders are ramping faster than others? Could that be something that you now need to focus on your leadership enablement on? Is it that reps in the Americas are ramping faster than reps in APJ? Could that be a linguistic? Could that be the way that you're delivering the enablement? Is that something we need to localize your enablement a little bit better? Are you seeing reps ramp faster in a commercial or mid-market segment versus an enterprise segment? You can now start to look at data from different angles. And when you do that, what it does is, first of all, you can provide this data to your CRO or your CSO and show how reps are ramping and then measure time to impact. That's huge. You can then start to course correct, learn from what's working, what's not. And then as you dig into the data, you can refine your onboarding program. You can go back to those four items that I talked about earlier. And are we hiring right around the world? Partner with your talent team. Are all reps going to warm territories? What are we doing right and what's maybe not working so well from an onboarding enablement perspective? And then is the management and coaching basically consistent across the board? Now you start to correlate all this. Now think of the insights that you can bring to your sales leader. Now it starts to get really impactful. From an instrumentation perspective, so now as you start to put this together, define your key metrics. What are the key metrics that you want to look at? Is it time to first deal? Is it time to first quota attainment? Is it time to first 10 deals? You want to establish what measurements your company defines as being success criteria for new hires coming on board. Because this varies from company to company. If you are a SaaS company selling 100% SaaS on consumption, well, it may be how much you increase your ARR or your consumption metrics, or how quickly you improve a specific metric or sign your first new customer. If you're a company that's still selling from a perpetual licensing perspective or subscription, it might be a very different how long before you sign your new customer, or you expand to a new buying center, or you sell 3 products or 3 solutions into your customer. You need to establish those with your sales leadership and make sure that all levels of leadership are in alignment on this. Then you've got to develop a readiness index. As you're ramping up new reps, what's the checklist? What do people need to accomplish as they come on board? Well, you want to make sure that they're completing some of your enablement. Is it too much enablement? Is it enough enablement? Just making sure that you've got the right material for the right set of reps. Are you giving your inside sales reps or your SDRs the same enablement as you're giving your enterprise or your global strategic reps? Should that be equivalent? Should you have some enablement that maybe is adjusted for each type of segment? Making sure to adjust that. How long does it take for the rep to be able to master the sales pitch, to be able to navigate the organization, to be able to produce a quote and to navigate the systems? You want to establish, what are some of the things when you look at the day in the life of a rep? What are some of the critical things that you want them to go through? If you're a new rep, I was a rep for many years. I joined a company, and the first thing I wanted to do, I wanted to sell because I wanted to close deals and make money. But then you really want to learn, how do you sell? So what's my sales pitch? Who's my competition? How do I get a deal done? Once I get it, are there any processes or procedures I need to follow to book it from a compliance perspective? Go through and work with some of your top reps, understand what a day in their life looks like, and bring that down, because that's something that you want reps to understand. And you want to be able to checklist this so that as reps are ramping up, they're going through these milestones. You're sharing this with their leaders, and those leaders are taking an active role in the onboarding, making sure to hold those reps accountable, but also to scale. There's no way that as an enablement team, you can spend your time with every single rep coaching them on their sales pitch. You want to train them and enable them on how to give the sales pitch, but then you want them to role play with their leader, their peers, some other people within their cohort. And that's something that's got to be driven by the sales leadership. So establishing that readiness index is pretty key. And then there's a variety of tools that you can look at out there. Tools like MindTickle, Salesforce has a module around enablement. There's many different tools that you can look at that allow you to measure and quantify this. And I can't stress the importance of being able to measure and quantify things enough, because as an enablement team, you're constantly looking to invest, to do new things, to train and develop your team. And if you can quantify that, hey, by doing this, we're having, a related impact, then it allows you to justify more requests for more investments. But also it allows you to quickly learn what's working and what's not, so you can quickly stop doing the things that aren't working and focus on what are working, or things that are working, and then apply them to other parts of the business. But it also allows you to see, because things truly aren't one size fits all, so you can create more bespoke enablement that really supports your global organization. So key actions that I'd like to recommend as you reflect from this session. The first one is align on those definitions, those metrics. Book some time with your sales leaders to understand what are the metrics that matter most to the company, document them, and they don't have to be complicated. Productivity, ramp, how do you measure ramp? Just making sure that everybody speaks the same language. I've often used this analogy, if a few people are getting together and saying, hey, let's go watch this football match. I'm based in Canada. Some of my colleagues are based in the US. We might have some Europeans on the call. I know Jack is from the UK. Our definition of football is different. Canadian football, three 3 downs, bigger field. US football, 4 downs, and a smaller field. Everywhere else in the world, football is soccer. So we all have different expectations coming in. You want to make sure that everybody's aligning to that same common definition so that you all know what to expect from each other. The second is communication. As you ramp up people and as you launch these, communicate. Ideally, you put this together and your CSO or your CRO communicates it to the field. These are our expectations. These are our focus areas. This is what we want you to do. And then as you do it, share progress, participation rates, how people are succeeding, what's working, what's not, any key learnings, share that feedback. But that communication is essential because you want your leaders to buy in and partner with you. And finally, analyze, improve, and accelerate. Looking at the data is essential. And just looking at the data and saying, all right, we've got more people participating or we've got more people achieving quota, great. Dig into the data. And I always encourage my team, be curious, look at the numbers, dig into it, and try to understand, what does this mean? Are we having an impact? Are we not having an impact? Are we getting the desired outcome? When you set a plan and you say, we want to do this, and this is what we want to achieve by doing it. This is how we measure success. Are you achieving those metrics? And if so, great. If not, why not? But digging into that data, being curious is absolutely key. So just some thoughts of what I've learned over the last decade or so of what I see are key metrics to any chief sales officer or CRO, to any board, to any C-level leader, even to a CFO. And it's all about building your business. Thanks, everybody. I believe, Jack, we can go to some questions now.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick, thanks so much for that. So yeah, we do have a few questions that have come in here. In fact, just the ones. If anyone does have any more questions, feel free to drop them into the chat. So the question is, I work in a fairly new enablement team and we'll be beginning our manager coaching program next year. What would you say are the top 3 things that can help managers influence ramp and productivity?
I'd say, as I mentioned before, one of them is coaching. Just making sure that you're spending time with your reps, that you're defining what's important, and that you're spending time developing them, whether that's role playing, whether it's inspecting deals, looking at activity, but just the impact that managers will have with their reps, I think is key. The second one is hiring right. Oftentimes we're gonna recruit and we're gonna hire people saying we're looking for somebody with 10 years selling experience. Well, 10 years selling experience, you could be working at Best Buy selling video games, and I've got 10 years selling experience. So being very precise. In fact, some of the best job descriptions I've seen talk about the outcomes. The rep that we're looking to hire should close 10 new accounts within their first 2 quarters. We're expecting them to be able to prospect and do X, Y, Z. Setting the expectations, I think, is key. Because what it does, it self-selects people out because people look at that and say, no, that's not for me. So getting the right talent. So I'd say for the top things that managers can do, coach your reps, make sure you're hiring right, and make sure that you're leaning in and you're participating and engaging with your enablement team, that you're telling them what's working, what's not working, but that it just isn't just do this, check the box, just get it done with, but that they're actually seeing this as a tool to ramp up. I saw the other question from Demi, I believe, around how much coaching should fall on enablement versus management. I believe the ownership should fall with management, but some of the best enablement programs I've had, when a new hire comes on board, they have somebody that does some mentoring or some coaching every other week, just help them develop, refine their talk track, refine their sales pitch, help them navigate the company. And then you often will pair that rep with a peer within a company so that they're paired up with somebody else in the financial services industry or somebody else within the retail industry so that they can learn from one of their peers and understand some of the tribal knowledge. So there's many different ways you can go about it.
The next question here from Sandy is, and how does enablement I think we've had that one. We haven't, no. And how does enablement inspire leaders to coach?
Sorry, how does enablement inspire leaders to coach?
In fact, sorry, I think I've missed the question here. Sorry. I think that was a follow-on from Demi's question. So yeah, the question here is, and how does enablement inspire leaders to coach?
I think it's the right enablement gives reps the tools they need to be successful. And I'm also looking at Alex's question around influencing leaders who are too busy to help with enablement. I think at the end of the day, everybody's coin operated in sales. A rep comes on board and you explain to them, look, what we want to do, our mission as an enablement team is help you make as much money as we can as quickly as possible. If the rep doesn't react to that, then first of all, you've hired the wrong rep. Taking that same message to a leader, our mission is to help your reps ramp as quickly as possible so they can sell as much as possible, as quickly as possible, therefore helping you achieve your targets and make as much money as possible, as quickly as possible. That should resonate. And leaders typically will take the time. If you come to them and all you do is tell them, hey, Jack, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. People are being told what to do all the time. When you show up with, this is what we're trying to do, this is why. If we do this, we're seeing huge success. I need your support in this because this will help your new hires hit their number within their first quarter. Now you're leading with the why and you're helping the leader lean in more. And I think I see Sunny's question. Do I tie metrics and readiness checklists to sales competencies? Yeah, you've got to look at different things. You've got your selling skills. You've got your sales qualification, whether you're using MedPick or something else. But you can tie some of the items in the checklist to how quickly can somebody pitch your company. I think if you break it down, keep it easy. For a new rep, you want them to be able to quickly articulate the value prop of what you're trying to sell. Can they pitch? Do they understand who the competitors are in the competitive landscape and how to position themselves against it? Do they understand the sales motion, the key sales plays? And do they understand the sales methodology in place? If you focus around those things, you'll achieve some success. I'm seeing a lot of other. Great! I pronounce it properly. Great, thank you. How much should enablement be involved in the hiring choices? I think that this should be a partnership between the talent team and the HR team and the enablement team, where as you're hiring people, you've got competencies you've developed, you're hiring people, you're seeing them ramp. If you're measuring ramp and productivity numbers, then you can feed back and say, look, we're seeing reps that are coming from these type of companies or with these skills ramp faster than these reps. You can provide a feedback loop where you're now helping the team evolve the competencies, and that real-time feedback really carries a lot of weight.
There was a question a little bit further up that was, what is a predominant metric, or what have you seen as a key differentiator that defines productivity?
The defined productivity in terms of a key metric, I typically look at as how much revenue has somebody booked per quarter. And then you can look at the average bookings or billings per quarter, depending on your company metrics. You look at that, the average per quarter, per rep, per district or region, per area, per geo. I mean, you can keep scaling it up. And I'll look at it from two perspectives. There's seasonality in sales. So just looking at one quarter isn't always the right lens. So you want to look at multiple quarters and look at the attainment within the quarter, the average productivity within the quarter. But then you want to look at a 4-quarter rolling productivity so that you can see, is your average 4-quarter rolling productivity going up consistently? What that means is you don't just have one big deal that spikes and it looks like, hey, everybody's claiming success, and the next quarter everybody tanks, then it looks like everything's dropping. It's always going to be lumpy, especially with seasonality. But if you've got a 4-quarter rolling average and you're looking at that, and then you're kind of digging into the data with the individual quarterly attainment, now you're looking at it from 2 different angles, and that typically gives you a very good outlook on productivity.
Absolutely. And that does, in fact, bring us to time. There may have been a few questions that we didn't get to. So if anyone does have any more questions for Nicholas, then please feel free to reach out to him over on LinkedIn. And I'm sure that he'll be more than happy to answer any more questions there. Grab a virtual coffee and keep the conversation going. So that said, Nicholas, thank you so much for taking the time to present to us. And to everyone that tuned in, thank you so much. And we'll see you all very soon.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.